bet when you got up this morning you weren't thinking, this is the first day of the new year. But it is. It's the new church year that we begin today. And biblical scholar Walter Brueggemann tells us that Advent is an abrupt disruption in our ordinary time. An utterly new year, a new time, a new life. So today we move forward out of time and away from the power and money-driven world we live in. Of course, we all know there's still shopping to be done for others and maybe even for ourselves. Yet our faith calls us and reminds us that there are gifts worth watching and waiting for. So like the gospel writer says, we must be alert and ready, for we never know the hour or the day it will come. In our waiting, though, I invite us to close our eyes, if you are comfortable doing that, and listen again to the prophet's vision of healing, justice, and peace. He says, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion will go forth instruction, and the word from the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore." I think it's difficult to listen to this dream of Isaiah, knowing that there are conflicts and war that flare up or threaten to flare up from Syria all the way to Central America. Even in our cities, in our neighborhoods as well, maybe even in our homes or workplaces. Whether in our families or within the walls of our congregations, we know it's there. And it kind of hangs overhead. And I believe it was much the same for Israel back in the day. Threat, destruction, and exile by one empire after another empire. They were the first ones to hear this dream of Isaiah's, this dream, this vision of peace. And in those words, they found hope. It allowed them to trust in Yahweh, in their God. It allowed them to trust in a power greater than all the empires in the world. And so as Advent begins, we too are being called to this dream of hope. A part of the hope that allows us to seek to walk in God's ways. And though it's a long journey to that mountain of God, if we deeply long for peace, we won't let anything stop us. And we're not alone in this longing. I don't know if you knew this, but this Isaiah's image of beating swords into plowshares is inscribed in the wall near the United Nations building in New York City. And so these words continue to inspire many different peoples to work together for peace. I find this image of peace comforting. It wells up inside. And I think if we have that image of peace or that hope of peace, we want to kind of close our eyes and make it so. But it also reminds us once again who is really in charge. The Creator, who whirled earth into existence and continues to breathe life into us. So along with that comfort, Walter Brueggemann again says there's always a catch. I can picture him standing in front of a lecture hall with his wispy hair waving in the breeze as he teaches, God wills for the world a center of justice and righteousness that will get our minds off our own petty agenda and our penchant to protect our little investments. He says, I find that vision overwhelming and not very welcome because the things I value most, I'm reluctant to lose or risk, and even more reluctant to share. The case of the human condition. So I have to ask then, what is our role, or our church's role, in bringing that great day to fruition that Isaiah describes? A place where no sword will be lifted again. Fortunately, I don't have an answer exactly to that question. But maybe during this Advent, we each can spend some time on our own, mulling over what we truly long for in our own lives, and the price we're willing to pay for it. That's a really tough concept, actually. What are we really longing for, and what are we willing to risk to have that come? And then consider how we beat our personal swords into plowshares. And again, as much as we might wish that Advent and the coming of Christmas will be light-filled and peaceful, we have to remember that the coming of the Christ child wasn't an easy or quiet task. Hearts and minds had to be prepared and changed. Just think of young Mary, stunned by the appearance of an angel, and even more surprised to find out she was pregnant. And then the older Joseph, faced with a choice of breaking an engagement to save face, or stepping up and standing by his promises for an unknown future. Think of yourself. We still have work to do, personal, relational, and spiritual, yet we do it with Isaiah's promise of what God will do in good time. And meanwhile, remember, it's Advent, which means God is working today in us, in others. And there is our hope, that God is still working. May that promise spark in us today and begin a transformation, probably gradual, hopefully honest, so that we each can continue to carry the dream of peace into reality. And I'll close this sermon with some wise words from Fred Rogers, who said, "When I say it's you I like, I'm talking about that part of you that knows that life is far more than anything you can ever see or touch. That deep part of you that allows you to stand for those things without which humankind cannot survive. Love that conquers hate, peace that rises triumphant over war, and justice that proves more powerful than greed."